If you're waiting for the perfect time to take on a trainee, let me save you the trouble. There isn't one. But there are better times, and slower markets, surprisingly, might just be the golden hour. Today on the Buzzcast, we're going to be talking about why the lull in activity could be your cue to lean in, not bail out. We've got a fantastic guest lined up who's walked this path herself, and she's got the blisters to prove it. This one's for the veterans thinking about legacy and for the rookies trying to get their boots in the door. Stick around. After the break, we'll have more to come on the Appraisal Buzzcast.
Intercorp, a division of Norman Spencer, has your back. Comprehensive insurance coverage from a team that's always there when you need them. The team at Norman Spencer is ready to roll up our sleeves and dig into your toughest insurance questions. We're committed to appraisers and AMCs. Intercorp's programs are tailored specifically for the appraisal industry. Put our experience to work for you. Please contact Susan Lomeli, Lomeli, at norman-spencer.com to discuss your insurance needs. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzzcast with your host, Hal Humphreys.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Appraisal Buzzcast. Let me bring back in Hal, our host. Hey, Hal. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Jim. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Well, we're really excited to bring in a first-time guest that we met at the Axe in San Antonio. Many of you may know her from our popular Facebook group, but now you get a chance to put a face with the social media profile. We want to welcome in Becky Johnson from North Carolina. She runs the Appraiser Trainees Learning Together group. Hey, Becky.
Hey guys, how are you doing?
Just fantastic. It seems like just yesterday that we got to spend a little time with you out there in San Antonio.
Yeah, it was great to see you both.
Well, I gotta say, I'm pretty excited to talk to you. We hear a lot about the Appraiser Development Initiative from Fannie Mae. We hear a lot about trainees in this business. At every conference, there are trainees hanging around looking for their mentor. I know from experience, Becky, that it's really difficult for trainees to find a mentor. It can also be pretty difficult for a mentor to make that leap to bringing on a trainee. And those are the things I want to talk to you about today. But before we get there, since this is the first time you've been on the show, do me a favor and just kind of tell me a little bit about your history, your background in the industry. Tell us who Becky is.
Sure. Well, I am a certified residential appraiser on the coast of North Carolina, the southeastern coast. And I'm fairly new to the industry, and I did not come into the industry the traditional way. I don't have any family members who were appraisers, so I kind of stumbled upon it myself. And that's why I know how hard the struggle is on finding a supervisor. And I just wanted to give back. And that's why I've kind of started this initiative with my Facebook group, because when I started, I felt like I was inventing the wheel. So when everybody says that appraisers work in silos, I wanted to kind of take that silo down and connect trainees and supervisors. And so we're not all figuring it out simultaneously by ourselves.
I love it. I love it. Well, let me ask you, so, you came into this business without having any family members. My father was an appraiser. So when I was getting into the business, I was able to get my dad to introduce me to a guy here in Nashville who introduced me to another guy. And that's, that's kind of the standard way it has been for a long time. Coming at it from a background where you don't have a family member in the business, getting that first mentor, the first person to open the door, can be really difficult. Now, you published an article for the NAA, the National Association of Appraisers, Appraiser Focus magazine, about how a slower market is actually one of the best times to take on a trainee. Tell me more about that.
Well, I really think it is. When I started was right during the COVID boom, and everybody that I went to talk to take me on as a trainee said, sorry, we're just too busy. We can't take anybody. We can't take anybody. We're too busy. And when I did finally find somebody to take me on, I mean, he wasn't kidding. We were busy. And it was definitely trial by fire and not a whole lot of training, but just do this, do this. And now I'm finding that now when things got slower, I had the opportunity to go back and take some of those classes to teach me how to do better analysis, how to do better report writing. And once the slow times really didn't get much faster, I thought, okay, now I want to do more. Now I want to diversify my business. So I think when things slowed down, that was when I really started thinking, this really is a great time to take on a trainee. And I'm surprised that more supervisors aren't seeing it that way.
It's an interesting conundrum. So, as a practicing appraiser during COVID, I tried to bring on an assistant who wanted to become a trainee. And there's so much happening so fast when you're busy like that you can't take the time to do the hands-on training that I think is so critical for someone that wants to be a trainee. So I understand that. And then on the other side of it, again, as a practicing appraiser, when the work is slow, it can be difficult. I totally get it. It can be difficult to allocate the funds to pay someone to be a trainee. But I do think that when things slow down is a time that we as appraisers can take to actually train someone properly. What are some of the advantages from your perspective of taking on a trainee when the market is slow?
Well, exactly what you said. You have the time to go through reports carefully. You're not having to get them out the door. You're not having to rush. And for me, I never really saw the cost of taking on a trainee to be a detriment when you're slow, because there's so many different ways around that having this trainee doesn't need to cost you money. It actually could earn you more money. I learned a lot by listening to podcasts, by listening to you and Brian, Blaine and Dustin. And one thing that always really resonated with me was how all of you talk about you have to dig your well before you're thirsty. And that's the case. And when things got slow and I started taking those classes and then I learned everything I wanted to and I got more confident, I thought now's the time to dig my well. And that's by diversifying and by bringing on a trainee to help me diversify.
Yeah.
So I knew being a trainee and trying to find a supervisor that I didn't have to cost them money. And that was how I found my supervisor. I said, this is what I can bring to your business. This is how instead of costing you money, I can help make you money. And that is by diversifying the business outside lending. If you're just looking at lending, you're right. You're really going to ebb and flow when the market ebbs and flows. But if you're not, there's consistent work. So now with things being slower, I have time to go out and try to get that consistent work, or to have a trainee help me get that consistent work.
There it is. The ability for an appraiser who is a practicing appraiser to see that trainee as an asset, not just a money sink, but someone that can help them grow their business. I know appraisers across the country who have struggled with that idea of, I've got to pay this person. I've got to, Paul Rill over there in South Carolina talks about you can not only not be cost money, but you can earn money with the trainee. Dustin Harris talks about using trainees to bring in money. There are ways to do that. What are some other key points from your article about which you would want our listeners to be aware?
Well, there are ways for the trainees to help us earn money, and that's getting out there and maybe going to Chamber of Commerce meetings. If you've got a trainee who's very comfortable around people, going to meet and greets with different bar associations, then you can get in some of that estate work, you can get some of that divorce work. Also, social media and social marketing. If you've got a trainee who's good with that type of thing, they can get you on Yelp, they can get you on Google business pages, get your Facebook going. I think a really important thing is so many of us have websites that we never look at, and we just don't even know how relevant those landing pages are anymore. The trainee can not only go in there and look at those landing pages, but can also say, well, maybe you want to try this, and get your Facebook to match your website, to match your Google business. But they're also in it because they want to log hours and they want to learn. So you can't put all of that aside. One thing that I talked to my trainee about is doing demonstration reports, where I can take a report that I did a year ago and I can have them do the exact same report. Now, the only time it's taking me is how to train them on how to do it, but then also just looking to make sure that they filled in the same things I already have. I'm not having to redo the analysis because I already have it there. Another way I thought that my trainee could help make money is once you're more able to do the analysis and got a little bit more confidence in your inspection and all of that, you can try to get work by local condominiums near you. Put up flyers, say that you're training and that you'll do low-priced pre-listings. That's going to bring money into my company, but it's also going to give him work that isn't work that had to be taken away from me because he found it himself.
Yep. One of the things I love is the idea of going to local bar association meetings. There's a group in Arizona, and this is a different industry. It's a private investigator who has built a group of legal professionals, people that provide services to legal professionals. They have a meeting once a month where they've got paralegals, investigators, title searchers, all of those kind of litigation and legal support services come together and they talk to each other. They share their experience. But what happens is you build this referral network right there among, the trainees and the paralegals and that level of employee. It is really good work. It's a really good way to bring business into the door. I know a lot of appraisers have focused so much on lender work over the years, and there's some pushback from appraisers saying, well, we got to focus on non-lender work. It's good work. And if times are slow and you've got a trainee that you can kind of introduce to those people and talk about your business model and what you do, that's a brilliant thing to do.
Yeah. My ultimate goal is to have my trainee do all the lending work. I found that the private work is so much more interesting.
Yeah.
And I just really enjoy it a lot more. So if he could do the lending and I can supervise him over that and I get to say yes to all of these really great and interesting private assignments, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I like that. The other thing, you mentioned websites and social media and having kind of continuity among all of the digital assets that are front facing. I want to say to our listeners, if you're an appraiser, you've been in this business for 30, 40 years, and your website looks like MySpace circa 2002, update your website. It's super easy to do. If you can't do it, that is something, we used to joke about needing a 12-year-old to come program the VCR for us. That's something the younger set can do. They understand, like getting an absolutely beautiful, you can go to Wix, you can go to Square, any number of services to build a beautiful one-page scrolling website that illustrates who you are as a professional. It doesn't have to look like MySpace circa 2005.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, and Becky, I know I'm going off script here, but a website doesn't have to tell the entire story. But if it looks professional and your clients come to see it, it's almost validation of the fact that you're a professional doing this work.
Right. And they've got to get driven to that website somehow. So wherever they're getting driven from, which is another thing your trainee can do, is help you research the Google Analytics, wherever your traffic is coming from also needs to be updated and interesting enough to make them want to click over to your website.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so now you've run this appraiser trainee group for a while. You've recently taken on your first trainee. What have you learned from being on the supervisor side of the process?
Ooh, I learned there's a lot to learn. And just like I leaned on other trainees as I was going through the training process, I am doing the same and leaning on other supervisors for best practices as being a supervisor. So when I took on my trainee, I let him know, I definitely don't know everything. You're my first trainee, and we are going to learn a lot of this together. And I said, I think it's great if you want to take on another supervisor, because I think it's good to learn from more than one and learn different ways to do things. And from experience, I had taken on a couple trainees as administrative assistants. And I was teaching them the tax records and where to find everything. And both of them left pretty early on, within 4 months, but not early enough that I hadn't spent a lot of time teaching. So with my current trainee, everything he gets to me through a video. And that video teaches him, I have 5 different counties. So that video teaches him the different ways to look things up in all different counties. It teaches him the first section of the report, page 2 of the report, the grid, all of it. And then I told him, I want to meet with you after 30 days, after 60 days, after 90 days. And when I do my review of you, I want you to do a review of me, because I need to make sure how I'm training you is effective. And if there's something I can do different that would be more helpful, I want to do it. So that I asked him about those videos, and he said, I think it's great. He said, we've got big breaks between we're doing certain counties. And instead of asking you or taking all this time to figure it out, I can just refer back to that video.
It sounds to me, Becky, like you've just got this natural ability to take your ego and put it on the shelf and not take it personally when your trainee comes back with feedback that is, it's constructive, but it may not be like the best thing. Like if they have something bad to say, you're willing to hear that. If your trainee is working for another mentor, absolutely, it's a great way for them to learn more, but you can probably learn something from what they tell you about what the other mentor says.
Yeah.
I guess my point is, if you're going to be taking on a trainee, I find it really useful to, and I talk about it in terms of take your ego, put it on the shelf, leave it there, because it's not necessary here. We learn so much more personally, and I think we do a better job of teaching when we leave our ego on the shelf. So I just observing what you had to say, I think you just naturally do that.
Yeah, and I really do want to learn. I want to get better. He's my first trainee, but I don't think he's going to be my last. And with every trainee, I want it to be a better experience for all of us.
Yeah, yeah. All right, now let me ask you this. So you're training someone right now. We've got the 1004 form, the 1007 form, the 1025 form. We got all these forms. We got the 2.6 UAD. There's a new UAD coming down the pike, and it's going to be here pretty soon. How are you dealing with the old versus the new in the training process?
Well, I think I'm going to be fortunate with it, because my trainee is a younger guy. Like you said, get a 12-year-old to do your website for you. He's younger, and that is the one thing that he has caught on to very quickly. I've done mobile appraising. Pretty much since I started my training, I did as much as I could, but since I've been on my own, I do even more mobile, because my supervisor didn't necessarily do mobile. And my trainee has just fallen into it so easily. We were on an inspection today, and he showed me something on the app I hadn't seen before. So a lot of his training is the background training of filling out the county stuff, where to find the records, how to do the analysis. But I think when it comes to the UAD, the new 3.6, I think he's going to be as much help for me as I'm going to be for him on that.
Yeah, yeah. And here's the thing. If I'm just going to say a sidebar for our listeners. If you're a practicing appraiser and you're still using a clipboard and a pen and a digital camera, that's okay. It's not the wrong thing to do, but I beg you, learn how to do the mobile appraising process. Start to use with your software. Every software available out there has a mobile tool. Start to use that tool, because the new UAD is going to ingest information so much easier through the mobile app than it is back at the office typing things into a computer. Becky, let's do this.
I don't think that the mobile app is faster. I had heard from others that they can do their inspection so much faster with the mobile app. And I'm proficient with the mobile app. I wouldn't say that it's faster, because there is more filling out than just writing a square on a clipboard.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's more efficient. So it may not be faster at the inspection, but it's more efficient overall.
My inspection time when I switched to mobile 4 years ago, and I literally just made the hard switch. I didn't even take the clipboard into the field. I just carried, I work on my iPhone. I'm not a big fan of the iPad for this purpose. I know some people are. Either one is fine. But when I made the switch, what I found is my time on site was increased. My time at the desk in the office was decreased significantly because I wasn't recreating each entry from handwritten form into typing it into a form. It just saved me time on the back end.
Yes, same with me, and I'm glad to hear that that is the same for you.
Yeah. Well, let's do this. I want to take a real quick break and hear from one of our sponsors, and we will be right back.
ACI introduces ACI Sky Workbench, a cutting-edge cloud-based platform designed to streamline UR/AR appraisal report generation like never before. With seamless workflow integration, automated data management, and built-in compliance, Workbench empowers appraisers to work smarter, faster, and with greater accuracy. Visit aciweb.com for more info.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzzcast. I'm Hal Humphreys, your host. I'm joined today by Becky Johnson. Becky is an appraiser. She is a trainer. She's working with a new trainee. She hosts a Facebook group specifically for trainees. Becky, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to us today. I've enjoyed the heck out of this conversation, just talking about how, we can bring trainees in and not only not lose money, but potentially make more money using a trainee. I can't thank you enough for being here and taking the time to share your experience with us.
I thank you too, and I really hope through this medium that you have, the article that I put out, that it will make a difference, and maybe some certified appraisers who've never had a trainee before might take the leap while it's slow, because now really is such a great time to do it. And I really think there's so many rewards from it.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, Becky, I'm going to warn you, Jim Morrison, our producer, likes to hit me with an anonymous appraiser question to make me look like a fool in front of the entire appraisal community. But I have you here today to help me out on this. So, let's tuck in and see if we can answer. Jim, do we have an anonymous appraiser question today?
Yes, we do. We actually have a special anonymous appraiser question that I got from Becky's group, Appraiser Trainees Learning Together. So I'm sure Becky may have seen this already. But I think it's an interesting question that our audience who hasn't seen it, who's not part of the group, would be interested in hearing about. I will say, if you're not part of the group, we'll put the link in the description. You should go check it out. Request to join if you want to help out other trainees or just give your feedback. All right, so here's the question. Hi, guys. I have a question for the working certified residential appraisers. Do you ever have discrepancies regarding the GLA listed on the MLS and the GLA you've personally measured? I appraised the home that was 200 square feet different than what the MLS was showing, and now the lender is questioning my measurements. They sent me back to the property to remeasure. I did today. I used a measuring wheel and a digital app. So in total, I've measured the home 3 times, and all 3 of them were lower than what the public records show. Apparently, a prior appraisal was showing a larger amount, and that makes me question whether the prior appraiser just used the measurements to match public records. How do I handle this?
Becky, you want to take a stab at this?
Yes. Jim, I did see this in my Facebook group. And man, I feel for that person, because this has happened to all of us. 200 square feet, you do what they ask you to, you go back out and you remeasure. And then you've remeasured it twice while you're out there. You've used 2 different forms of measurement, and it's still coming out different than tax records, different than other MLSs. And the AMC is saying that it came out different than a prior appraiser's report, which you haven't seen. But it really does make you second guess what you've done. And I think you just have to trust in yourself, because you don't know what their modes of measurements were, if they were doing it correctly. And if you have measured it now 3 times and your 3 times are consistent, all you can do is state in the report, I've personally measured. This is what I've come up with. I don't know how those other entities came upon their measurements, but I am using mine.
That is an absolutely great answer. I will add to that and say, when your client comes back and says, hey, your square footage is 200 square feet less or 200 square feet more, don't take offense at that. Don't bow up immediately. Do take the time to go back out and remeasure the house. The reason I say that is, and I think it's very helpful to share my personal screw ups in the world of appraisal to illustrate to people out there that we all make mistakes, right? I went out and measured a house. This is probably 4 years ago. I measured the house. It was a rectangle, like an easy rectangle to measure. I got the side measurement. I got the front measurement. There were some windows that I hit the windowsill and the window stool and, kind of added those together across the front. And I overshot one of my measurements. So I came out 200 square feet larger than the tax records and apparently previous appraisal. So I got this exact note from my client, only I had over measured the property. My initial reaction was, well, the tax assessor is always wrong. They don't have to be right. They just have to be fair. I've done my measurements, but I went out and checked it. And sure enough, I missed it. I just missed it. And what you do at that point is you say to your client, wow, thank you so much for pointing this out. I missed it. Here's the right measurement. They were right, whatever. But if you go back out and measure it and it turns out you were spot on right last time, you are not responsible for what the tax assessor says. You are not responsible for what another appraiser says. You are responsible for your work. So just say, I measured to ANSI standards. These are my measurements. Here's my calculations. This is my story and I'm sticking to it.
I agree.
Jim, have we answered that thoroughly enough?
Yeah, and how bringing up ANSI is a good point. You don't know if that previous appraisal was done before the ANSI requirements were put in place. I know on the previous house we sold, that attic loft, I don't know at this point whether it would still count in the GLA. So that's something to bring up as well.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and look, I mean, again, I am not responsible for another appraiser's work. If they came out exactly the same as the tax assessor, I can make some personal assumptions about what they may or may not have done, but it's not my problem. Here are my measurements. Here's what I did. Here's what it means. This is my story. I'm sticking to it. And literally say, I cannot answer for another appraiser's work. And, whether or not the appraiser measured it before ANSI was in effect, or they just took the tax assessor's number and plugged it in, I don't know. I do know this, and Becky, I'm sure you've experienced this as well. Real estate agents, unless you're in Kentucky or North Carolina, as far as I know right now, they don't have to measure to ANSI standards. They can. Yeah,
they don't hear. Most of them don't know what ANSI is.
Right. The house catty corner from my house here in Nashville, Tennessee, it has an ADU that is attached to the main dwelling. There's a locking door betwixt the two. On the MLS listing, it shows it as, let's say, 5,000 square feet, 3,500 square feet, and 6,000 square feet. It's one of those things. I don't know which it is unless I go out and measure it myself. So you can't trust. I mean, look, real estate agents have a different job than we do. And their job is to sell the property. In some states, they're required to follow ANSI, but at the end of the day, it's our job to identify the property being appraised. And part of identifying the property being appraised for most of our clients, especially for working for lenders, is to measure the house and say, this is how many square feet it got.
Yeah. And if you're doing your due diligence, before you turn in that report, that you're off by 200 feet from the tax records and from the MLS. And at that point, I put it in my report. I say, I recognize that I'm more than 100 square feet off of these other sources, and I am using my personal measurements. But every time I am a little bit off, I definitely measure a second time to make sure I'm not the one that screwed up before I leave.
Yeah, as I illustrated in my earlier story, like, we do make mistakes. So put your ego on the shelf, be willing to admit it. Hey, I made a mistake. Let's fix it. Look, and at the end of the day, most of your clients are going to be totally fine if you say, oh, geez, I made a mistake. Let's fix this. They're not going to come after you, hardcore and try and take your license away. Just admit you made a mistake. Get out there and fix it. Make it right. Do that thing. Anyway, Jim Morrison, is that all we have?
That is all, Becky. It was great meeting you at ACS in San Antonio. We're so glad you were able to come join us today.
Thank you for having me and making it so easy for me. I really appreciate you both.
Thank you, Becky. If we have nothing else, for Jim Morrison and Becky Johnson, I'm Hal Humphreys, and that is your Appraisal Buzzcast for this week.